Apologies, but I'm glad that you were able to wait. I want this morning to address the very serious state of affairs that continues in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the rampaging of the criminal element and the number of murders and violent crimes which seem now to become accepted by the authorities. And I want to draw you to the position of the government through the presentation of the Minister of National Security in the Parliament. A very curious thing happened at the start of the calendar year. It was on the 7th of January. I think that was the day when the Parliament met with no real business on the agenda. We came from the Tobago campaign to lay the ill-fated Tobago bill. You may recall that bill was laid one day to be debated the following Wednesday. On the day when we met to lay the bill, while the Tobago bill was being constructed behind the chamber, in the chamber on the 7th of January was the Minister of National Security, who on his own song came and volunteered to the Parliament what we at the time took issue with. It was a whole tissue of lies about the state of crime at the end of 2012. This was the Minister of National Security reporting to the country about the state of serious crimes on the 7th of January 2013. And he had this to say, excuse me. What he did, instead of comparing 2011 with 2012, so the population could see what direction the crime statistics were going, he was comparing 2012 with 2010. Because between 2010 and 2011, there had been an increase. And between 2011 and 2012, there had been an increase. But because 2012 was lower than 2010, reporting on the 7th of January 2012, he was comparing it to 2010 and making no reference to 2011, being smart with foolishness. But he had this to say. Murder between 2010 and 2012 had declined by 26%. The intention there was to give the population the impression that murder had declined significantly in the last 24 months of the past. Wounding had declined by 18%, breaking and burglary by 26%, robbery by 29%, fraud by 45%, larceny by 11%, and larceny of motor vehicle by 41%. Now, if you listen to these percentages coming out of the mouth of the Minister of National Security, you would get the impression that serious crime in Trinidad and Tobago was taking a nosedive. And then he went on to praise himself and to praise his government and whatever. And we took issue with this, because at the end of this bit of Hansard, you would see where, as opposition leader, I stood up and I asked the Speaker whether he would grant us the motion on the House to waive the standing order, so we could have immediately debated what the Minister had put before the Parliament. Because one doesn't have to go very far to understand that the Minister was seeking to deceive the population. So that was the 7th of January. We have since gone to the police own records available to the Minister. And these are the facts coming from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service about serious crimes between 2011 and 2012. Don't forget, the Minister was speaking on the 7th of January 2013, 1 week after these statistics were available to him. And what are the real facts? 2011 murders, and these are the official figures, because we didn't take issue with the official figures being low. 2011, 343 murders. 2012, 378. Burglaries, 2011, 3,891. 2012, 4,089. Robberies, 2011, 3,423. 2012, 4,235. Rape, incest, and other sexual offenses, 2011, 512. 2012, 824. Woundings and shootings, 2011, 494. 2012, 534. Those are the major categories of serious crimes, and those are the serious increases recorded by the police of Trinidad and Tobago. One asks oneself immediately, this being the official statistic of the polices, where, why, and how could the Minister of National Security have come to the Parliament on the 7th of January and purported to give the country the impression that he should be praised, his government should be praised, we should all be grateful because serious crimes are on the way down. He had a lot to say about the PNM administration in this speech. He had a lot to say about what wonderful things the government was doing. But the one thing that was important, the Minister of National Security, once again, was found guilty of not speaking the truth to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So subsequent to that, the news, as you were reporting, would have shown, you may recall, in August 2011, over a 4-day period, there were 7 murders in the Reno area. That resulted in a state of emergency that lasted from mid-August until the end of the year. Completely capsized the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And it was then that the government was shown to have no proper response to crime, no crime plan, no serious ideas, nothing new, and more importantly, that the government's actions of the preceding year had the effect of dismantling the state security systems. But because there were 7 murders, the solution to 7 murders in 4 days was a state of emergency. And we were told after what wonderful things this emergency would do for the country in terms of facing down the criminals and fighting crime and so on. And we found the solution because we had a prime minister with testicular fortitude to declare an emergency when 7 persons are murdered. And we had a government that had all the solutions and so on and so on. That was the rhetoric of August 2011 all the way into 2013. Come January 2013, there were days when we had just as much or more blood in Trinidad and Tobago. And the government kept very silent, hoping that the population would not notice. So on the 14th of January, 1 week after the minister spoke about this dramatic, precipitous fall in serious crime, we had 2 persons killed, one in Couva, one in Tobago. And I mention this because whenever there's an upsurge in crime in the country, the government focuses on Laventille, as though if there's a surge into Laventille, serious crimes in the country are being suppressed. But this was Tobago and Couva, 2 areas that you don't normally associate, according to the government, with violent crime. Then on the 8th, you had gang warfare yesterday claimed the lives of a father and 2 sons. It was in Beta. No comment from the government. On January 18th, this was 11 days after the minister spoke to the parliament, 8 shot in one night. 8 people shot in one night. And the way they counted in officialdom, if any of those 8 didn't die on that night and they die later on, they don't get counted as murder in the statistics. And interestingly enough, some of these shootings took place at the basketball court, where the government's major thrust is in fighting crime, as mentioned by the minister in the parliament, government's major accomplishment, Hoop of Life. And of course, on the 17th of February, 59 murders in 48 days. And it has gone beyond 59, the figure is now in 63. Killers, and I read the first line for you. Killers went on a rampage last weekend, snuffing out the lives of 7 men between Friday and yesterday morning. That is a repeat of the situation of August 2011. Same number of people killed on the weekend. Then you had a state of emergency. Now what you have is a Minister of National Security trying to convince the country that the exposure by the media that there is an unauthorized, illegal, improper, unknown, but possibly effective unit operating in Trinidad and Tobago. The Minister of National Security takes the position that he has nothing more to say. Well, the opposition has a lot more to hear. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to know a lot more about what is being said, about what has been going on in the Ministry of National Security. We know for a fact that nothing with respect to stanching the flow of blood and confronting the criminals has been happening. But up comes a former police officer who tells the country, in response to the Minister of National Security commitment to revitalize and reintroduce the flying squad. Some people think it's a good idea, some think it's not such a good idea, some think it's not such a good idea. But the bottom line is, here are people out there, people with a career in police service, whatever you might think of them, they are saying to the country, we responded to a call from the Minister of National Security, by the Minister of National Security, that the flying squad should be revived. They are now taking issue with the Ministry of National Security with respect to payment for work which they had done. Some of these persons have made available to the public documentation to show that they have been in direct contact, and the information that we have here at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, that these people have been in direct contact with the Minister of National Security soon after he was appointed in June of last year. Many of these meetings took place in the wee hours of the morning with the minister and his subordinates. And arising out of these meetings, plans and programs were put in place and work was done by these people. The fact of the matter is that the government now has difficulty in convincing the population that not whatever you might think of the officers, cranky, crazy or otherwise, what is in the public domain is a mixture of fact and fiction. And it's in the public interest to separate the fact from the fiction. Let me read for you what's in today's papers. National Security Operations Center, NSOC, Director Gavin Hira, who is reported to have been aware of plans to revive the unit, said he was only aware of the flying squad as a talking stage issue within informal meetings and not in any official way. Well, I take issue with that. Meetings at the office of the minister at 5 o'clock in the morning with the minister present, the junior minister present, director and senior officials present are not informal meetings. This is the formal state machinery meeting with these people in the state accommodation discussing state business. So I take issue with the director of the National Security Operations Center, which is something this government created when they shut down and brutalized the people in South, defamed them otherwise. They created their own image and likeness in something called the National Security Operations Center. That is being headed by this Garvin Hira. These people are meeting with Mr. Hira, the minister, the junior minister, and other high functionaries at 5 o'clock in the morning, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, many times, with respect to bringing back the flying squad. So I take issue with that statement. He said the group might have been like many other groups, ranging from social to academic fields, which had come forward in the past with ideas on how to assist the anti-crime trust. Again, the verb might. It's not a question of might. Something definitive was happening. A series of meetings were taking place between these high-level functionaries with significant authority over the lives of people in this country. And it's not a question of might. Might implies positively, negatively, did or didn't. It did happen. So it's not a question of might. This is an attempt to mislead the public against the background of persons now who are exposed for what they're doing, trying to pretend that they didn't know what was going on. So they're using the word might. It might have been. And then Hira stressed, and I'm quoting here again, Hira stressed there had been no instruction that the flying squad would be part of any agency with which the NSOC would have had to deal. Information that we have here at the Opposition Office indicates, contrary to what Mr. Hira is saying here, because in an earlier statement, it was published that he admitted to knowing and to facilitating the supply of motor vehicles to this unit. Not a motor vehicle, not a bicycle, a fleet of motor vehicles, including X-Trails, Tucsons, and cars. And if you look in another paper today, you'll see an attempt to deal with this by saying somebody loaned these fellas some cars. No, it's not a loan. We have discovered that the supplier of those vehicles is the normal supplier of vehicles to the police service. As a matter of fact, the supplier's only business is the supply of motor vehicles to the police service. And they were not supplied as any loan, they were supplied under an arrangement for ongoing continuous use with arrangements for replacement when and if they become defective. These vehicles were available to be used and were being used by this unit. I want to ask Mr. Hira today, since he is now saying that no instruction about the use of the flying squad came to him, and he doesn't know anything about it, on what basis did the supplier of motor vehicles make available to these people motor vehicles under his say-so, according to those who have been reported in public, so that vehicles were made available to them for work to be carried out? And then they go on to say that no money was disbursed and never any consent was given and so on in writing. But I want to tell this country something. If you go to Grenada, you will find very little record in writing of the Mongoose gang. If you go to Haiti, you would find very little in writing in cabinet by the Tonton Macoute. And if you go into any country where there are abuses taking place by citizens, by agencies which fall outside of the control of the cabinet and the population's transparent organizations, you will find very little in writing. So I take it that attempting to tell us now that we will find very little in writing does not end the issue. What we are concerned about is what took place in the operations. And that's why I'm asking the National Security Operations Center today. What was the purpose for which the vehicles were supplied to this unit? And if you didn't know about the unit's existence, and it was just some telltale birdie passing by a window whistling, in case you like the tune, why was it necessary to supply them with vehicles? And why was it necessary to be working out with them a budget, leading them to understand that the implied contract into which they had entered and the work that they were doing was work for which they would be recompensed sometime in the future, and now the whole thing has come to a head over payment for work done. And the information that we have in this office is that these officers had access to state resources other than the cars, and they had reason to believe that they were going to be paid, and they got themselves involved in investigations involving citizen security in many areas of the country, including drug interdiction and the investigation of specific murder cases. And then when this has now become public, we get lies and more lies from the Ministry of National Security, which has already demonstrated that it is not a source of truth in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have public officials like Mr. Hira cannot explain his conduct, trying to break for the ministry, following in the footsteps of the minister, trying to tell the public that what you are seeing and hearing is all a mirage. So today, I want to ask, two things happened in the not too distant future. This Minister of National Security, who is now pretending to know nothing about this, came to the Parliament in August, and he was appointed in June of 2012. There was a flood in Diego Martin in August of 2012. He came to the Parliament after and told the Parliament that in an effort to determine my whereabouts and my actions with my constituents during the flooding period, he put surveillance on the office of the Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West. Today I want to ask him, was that surveillance done by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, or was it done by this unit? There were problems in Belmont. Complaints went to the Ministry of National Security. I have seen the documentation. The Ministry of National Security responded to the complaints, and the route was citizen to minister, minister to Director Hira. The minister signs off on it, and it ends up in the hands of this unit, which took action. But yet they would have us believe that they know nothing about the existence of this unit, and it was a proposal on which no action took place. Well, if it was not action, how did they get a fleet of vehicles? And what was the purpose for the use of those vehicles? The government cannot have it both ways. We are not entirely stupid in this country. What we have here is an inconvenient exposure of an unauthorized operation which has now become known to the public of Trinidad and Tobago. And the serious implications of that lead the minister and some of his senior functionaries to be lying naked to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If there's a problem with the police service in Trinidad and Tobago, it's a loss of trust. And when you have this absolute volley of untruths coming out in the national security arena, it does nothing for building confidence in the national security agencies. And as long as the Minister of National Security continues to preside over this kind of operation, nothing will happen positively with respect to the country's response to the criminals. And that is why he has had to come to the Parliament and fabricate numbers and percentages to give us the impression that something is happening with respect to dealing with the crime scourge. We have no statistics on the improvement in detection of crime, in the conviction of criminals, and as for deterrence, forget that. Because the numbers show there's no deterrence. And there's nobody talking about detecting the crime. We just accept the killings, very few arrests being made, very few convictions being had. But you have the Minister of National Security coming to Parliament under a volunteered statement to give the impression that the government is somehow dealing with crime. This country has better accept that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is reduced to going abroad and talking inanities, which is what the Prime Minister is doing right now. She's in Haiti talking about the loss of economic well-being as a result of crime. We would have preferred to have heard that in Trinidad and Tobago so we could debate it here. Because when we spoke about that last year and the year before, the government was telling us all was well and there's no loss and the economy was booming. But yet we're now being told from Haiti that there's some significant losses taking place with respect to the crime situation and our response to the criminal environment in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, while the Prime Minister presides over the dismantling of Trinidad and Tobago's existing national security system, appointing a series of people who have failed at all levels, whether it's Commissioner of Police, head of this unit, head of that unit, you now have the NSOC, distancing itself from its creation. And the Prime Minister is out there telling the rest of the world that we should create some steel curtain. There used to be an iron curtain in Europe to keep the communists back. Now we have a steel curtain that she's advocating that we create in the current in the Western Hemisphere to protect us from criminals. Now, that doesn't make any sense. The criminals are already within our borders. And what borders we have are wide open. Right? Drugs are coming free sheet from St. Vincent to Tobago to Trinidad, accompanied by arms and ammunition, and that is known to the state, and precious little is happening about it. We hear a lot of talk now about protecting our maritime perimeter. This is where the government has dismantled what little we had, and right now there's precious little in place. The last we heard from the government was when they talk about going to Colombia